Before the snow-covered crash site. Before the headlines. Before the silence. There was a girl named Maura. A daughter. A sister. A star. A secret. To understand what happened that night in February 2004, you first need to understand her. And she wasn't who people thought she was. Maura Murray was born on May 4, 1982, in Hampshire, Massachusetts. The fourth of 5 children in a large Irish Catholic family, she grew up in a house with plenty of love, but also pressure. Her father, Fred Murray, was a hard-working man who loved his children fiercely, but wasn't shy about discipline or high expectations. He pushed Maura to excel. And she did. By high school, Maura wasn't just a standout student. She was a gifted athlete. She ran cross-country, competed in track, and trained harder than most girls her age. People described her as quiet but determined, sweet but guarded, and always ambitious. Her teachers called her one of the brightest students they'd ever had. She was beautiful in a subtle way, not flashy, but natural, with piercing eyes and an introspective demeanor that made people curious. But Maura had a habit of keeping parts of herself hidden. After high school, Maura was accepted into the prestigious United States Military Academy at West Point, following in the footsteps of her older brother. It was a path of pride for her family. West Point demanded discipline, academic rigor, and intense training. But Maura handled it, at first. Behind the scenes, things weren't going so well. The pressure at West Point was immense. She struggled socially. The culture was hypermasculine, and although she tried to blend in, she began feeling like she didn't belong. She became close with a fellow cadet named Bill Roche, who would later become her boyfriend. Then came an incident, a theft. Maura was caught stealing makeup from the commissary at Fort Knox while training in the summer. It seemed unthinkable. A promising young cadet, smart and capable, shoplifting? Rather than facing military discipline, Maura quietly transferred to the University of Massachusetts Amherst to study nursing. Her family tried to see it as a fresh start. But this would become the first in a series of quiet derailments in Maura's life. At UMass, Maura moved into dorm life and tried to regain her footing. She was focused on nursing, working part-time campus security shifts, and maintaining a long-distance relationship with Bill Roche, who had stayed behind in Oklahoma and was now working at Fort Sill. They talked often. But things weren't perfect. Behind the scenes, Maura had discovered Bill had been cheating on her. There were voicemails. Messages. Women he'd been seeing while she thought they were committed. She never confronted him publicly, but it tore her up inside. And Maura had secrets of her own. In late 2003, she used a friend's credit card number to order food, small transactions, under $10, but enough to raise alarms. She was caught and faced disciplinary action. The case was dismissed after she attended a diversion program, but it showed a pattern. Maura was under stress. And she wasn't making the best decisions. Then there was alcohol. Friends recall she sometimes drank heavily. At UMass, she once crashed her father's brand-new Toyota Corolla after a party. She claimed she had taken the car to look at condos he wanted to buy for her. The accident occurred around 3:30 a.m. after drinking. There was no arrest, but Fred Murray was furious. He'd taken pride in Maura, seen her as the one who had it together. Now, that image was cracking. On Thursday, February 5, 2004, Maura showed up for her usual campus security shift at the Melville dorms. It was cold and quiet, just another winter night in Massachusetts. At 10:20 p.m., she received a call from her older sister, Kathleen. According to Kathleen, the call was about her recent release from rehab and a fight with her fiancé. It didn't seem like anything that should have caused panic. But minutes after hanging up, Maura's supervisor found her at the front desk, utterly broken. She was crying. Silent tears turned into uncontrollable sobbing. Her hands were shaking. When asked what was wrong, she could only whisper, "My sister." But Kathleen would later say the conversation wasn't traumatic. It didn't make sense. What had really triggered Maura? Had she received another call afterward, one police never recovered? Or was she already emotionally unraveling beneath the surface, and this moment simply cracked her open? She was escorted back to her dorm. No one checked in further. On Friday, Maura told her professors she'd be out of town for a week due to a death in the family. But there had been no death. That lie was the beginning of something deeper. She began making preparations. On her computer, she searched for directions to Burlington, Vermont, rentals for cabins in New Hampshire, long-term lodging near ski resorts. She also wrote an email to Bill Roche, an emotionally complicated one. In it, she mentioned love, confusion, and forgiveness. Her words seemed torn between longing and farewell. On Saturday, she met up with her father again and borrowed his car to go shopping. She wrecked the car in the early hours of Sunday. Another accident. Another unexplained decision. But no arrest. It's important to note, Maura had 2 car accidents in the span of 3 days before her final disappearance. Her mind was elsewhere. Or maybe nowhere at all. On the morning of Monday, February 9th, Maura packed up her dorm. Neatly. Precisely. Some described it as a clean-out, as if she were withdrawing from school. She withdrew $280, the entire balance of her bank account, and bought about $40 worth of alcohol at a local liquor store. Surveillance footage captured her standing in line, alone, dressed warmly, face unreadable. She placed a box of Franzia wine, vodka, and Kahlua on the counter. She didn't look nervous. She didn't look excited. She looked blank. She got into her 1996 black Saturn, a beat-up car barely holding together, and drove off campus. Her cell phone was with her. Her debit card. Her MapQuest printouts. No one ever saw her on campus again. From UMass Amherst to Haverhill, New Hampshire is roughly 2.5 hours by car. Cell tower records later showed she drove north on I-91. The route matched the directions she had printed. She passed small towns. Snow-covered trees. Frozen lakes. Mountains in the distance. Around 7:25 p.m., she lost control of the Saturn on a sharp curve on Route 112, in Woodsville, a small village in Haverhill. She crashed into a snowbank in front of a small house. A resident, Butch Atwood, stopped his school bus and approached her. He later said she was calm but shaken. He offered help. She declined. He called police anyway. 7 to 10 minutes later, police arrived. Her car was empty. The driver's door locked. The lights off. And Maura, gone. They say most disappearances begin long before the person is physically gone. In the case of Maura Murray, you can almost feel the unraveling, one thread at a time. The pressure. The lies. The confusion. The quiet despair. But was she running from something? Or to something? And what was waiting for her on that cold, dark road in New Hampshire? What your thought? Drop your comment. Let's continue. On a lonely stretch of Route 112, beneath the falling dark of a winter evening, a car sits wrecked in a snowbank. It's quiet. Too quiet. There's no movement. No lights. And by the time help arrives, less than 10 minutes later, the driver has vanished. No footprints. No cries for help. No sign she was ever there. This is the last confirmed moment of Maura Murray's life. Maura Murray's car, a 1996 black Saturn SL2, was not road trip material. It had previously overheated. The muffler was loose. It had a cracked windshield and struggled in cold weather. It was not inspected. Not registered correctly. And yet, on February 9, 2004, Maura packed it for a trip hundreds of miles away into the White Mountains of New Hampshire. She told no one. She had printed MapQuest directions to Bretton Woods and Woodsville, both known for scenic cabins and ski lodges. But she'd made no reservations. Her exact destination was a mystery. By the early evening, Maura had been on the road for at least 3 to 4 hours. It was pitch black by the time she reached Haverhill, New Hampshire, a rural town of fewer than 5,000 people. Her car was spotted heading east on Route 112, also known as Wild Ammonoosuc Road, twisting, isolated, and poorly lit. Around 7:27 p.m., multiple local residents reported a loud bang and saw a car stuck in a snowbank near a sharp turn by a residential home. One of them, the now infamous Butch Atwood, a local school bus driver, stopped his bus and approached the car. Inside was Maura. Butch Atwood gave police a critical account that still shapes the case. He claimed Maura was alone in the car. He asked if she needed help. She told him she had already called AAA. But Butch later said there was no cell reception in the area. Maura had no visible injuries. She was shivering, he claimed, but calm. He got back into his bus and drove about 100 yards up the road to his house. There, he called 911 at 7:43 p.m. This detail matters, because between 7:27 and 7:46 p.m., Maura vanishes. At 7:46 p.m., Sergeant Cecil Smith of the Haverhill Police Department arrived on the scene. He found Maura's black Saturn locked and empty. The windshield was cracked. The front left headlight was broken. Both airbags had deployed. Inside, he found a box of wine spilled across the interior, a smashed Franzia container, and a few bottles of alcohol, some unopened. There were also printed MapQuest directions. Her gloves and some personal belongings were still there. Her debit card, credit cards, and cell phone were missing. But no Maura. There were no footprints in the snow leading away from the scene. No blood. No torn clothing. No drag marks. Nothing. It was as if she had vanished into the air. Between the moment Butch Atwood last saw Maura and the time Sergeant Smith arrived, no one else reported seeing her. Neighbors reported seeing a flurry of activity, lights from the crash, maybe movement. But no one saw her walk away. And if she had, why were there no footprints? The official narrative claimed she simply ran away into the woods. But it was 18 degrees Fahrenheit that night, and Maura was not dressed for a long walk. The woods were dark, deep, and covered in snow. Police brought in dogs to track her scent. The trail stopped 100 feet from the car, near the road. That led to a disturbing possibility. She got into another vehicle. A peculiar clue was found, a white rag stuffed into the tailpipe of Maura's Saturn. Fred Murray, Maura's father, would later say this was a trick he had taught Maura, to block exhaust if the car was running badly or to keep it from smoking. But some internet sleuths found the rag suspicious. Why was it there? Had Maura put it there after the crash? Or had someone else done it? It raised a darker theory. Was someone trying to disable the vehicle or cover something up? Multiple theories quickly emerged in the hours following the disappearance. She ran away into the woods, terrified, drunk, or emotionally unstable. She accepted a ride from a passing stranger, or someone she knew. She planned to disappear, using the crash as a cover. She was abducted between the time Butch left her and the police arrived. But if it was an abduction, it would have had to happen in under 10 minutes, with no witnesses. And why wasn't there any panic, any yelling, any struggle reported by neighbors? Unless it was quiet, deliberate, prearranged. The morning after the disappearance, Bill Roche received a voicemail on his cell phone. It was from a number he didn't recognize. When he played it, he claimed to hear only the sound of a woman sobbing. No words. Just crying. Barely audible. Some said it was a wrong number. Others insisted it was Maura. Investigators traced the number, but never disclosed the details. Bill kept the voicemail, replayed it often, and said later, "I believe it was her." To this day, the voicemail has never been publicly released. Initially, local law enforcement treated Maura's case as a voluntary disappearance. She was of age. There were signs she was going through emotional turmoil. And without a body, blood, or struggle, they believed she had chosen to disappear. It wasn't until days later that full-scale search efforts began. Helicopters, search dogs, ground teams, canvassing of local houses and woods. Nothing was found. Not a shoe. Not a fingerprint. Not even the scent trail went more than 100 feet from the car. By the end of the week, Maura's family arrived and began their own investigation. Fred Murray didn't believe the police theory for a second. Fred Murray was not a quiet man. From the moment he arrived in Haverhill, he pressed police, media, and locals for help. He believed Maura had been taken, possibly by someone from the area. He suspected Butch Atwood early on. Others suspected the homeowner near the crash. Fred walked the woods himself, printed flyers, begged for national media attention. But he would soon find himself stonewalled. The New Hampshire State Police refused to release most records. They claimed it was an open case. The FBI was not brought in. And local law enforcement appeared, in Fred's view, slow, dismissive, and unmotivated. He began to believe they were hiding something. The road was quiet. The crash was minor. The time between witness and officer? Just minutes. And yet, in those missing minutes, Maura Murray disappeared forever. No blood. No scream. No body. Just a locked car, an open question, and a trail that ends in silence. What happened on Route 112? And why does everything after that night feel like a cover-up? Would you like me to continue with Part 2, focusing on the initial investigation, Fred's battles with law enforcement, media coverage, and how internet sleuths began to take over the case? If you're enjoying the story, like, share, and subscribe to True Case Hub. The more you share, the more it motivates us to bring you the next part and more true crime stories.